Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. And today we're going to be looking at the crappy, inaccurate pollsters from 2020 and using them to prove that Donald Trump will actually win the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so, looking at the Electoral College, this is very interesting because Rasmussen kindly enough has laid out the 538 rankings based on the average pollster error in the 2020 US presidential race. And so what I've done is I've gotten the polling from Quinnipiac University, ABC News / The Washington Post, Civics, and Siena College / New York Times. And what I've done is I've gotten those four polls that had the crosstabs necessary to be able to be applied to the new Cook Political Report demographic swingometer that would basically be able to compare the 2020 demographics from those polls to their current ones, apply the shift of whatever it would be to the basically the results from the 2020 election. And when you do that, what's very fascinating, the most inaccurate pollsters from 2020, which basically all leaned left by multiple points, sometimes anywhere from mid to high single digits, gives Kamala Harris the most narrow of possible electoral college victories, even when you weigh to their electorate. Guys, literally the pollsters that were the most inaccurate and leaned the most left in the 2020 presidential election show Kamala Harris barely winning with 270 electoral college votes to Trump's 268 by the skin of her teeth. Wisconsin plus 0.8, Pennsylvania plus 1, Michigan plus 2.2. She holds up respectably here. She actually even improves in Iowa and does slightly better in Ohio. But even with the most inaccurate left-leaning pollsters from the 2020 cycle, when you apply their demographics, Trump is still improving in North Carolina. He's still improving in Georgia, still improving in Arizona, and actually even wins Nevada. So, and he's still winning Texas by 7.8, Florida by 4.9. So, my inclination leads me to believe that even in the pollsters that were the most inaccurate and most left-leaning, she can't even win Georgia, North Carolina, or Arizona and barely loses Nevada. Which leads me to believe that Trump's floor may very well be 297, where he's winning the Sunbelt states fairly easily, and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania basically go to Trump by at least a point or two. And you may say, oh, well, this must be bad news for Trump. Well, if you get the same exact polls, which you can see right here, I found all the crosstab data for the individual pollsters and then the ones for 2020. When you look at all of their polling and you apply their demographics to the 2020 election, it's going to show Harris on the top here. But look at this. Kamala Harris ahead by 9 percentage points in the popular vote. 9 percentage points. That's a 5-point miss from what actually happened. And she is winning 389 electoral college votes to Trump's 149. She's picking off a lot of the Rust Belt states by ridiculous margins, winning Minnesota by 11. She only won the state by roughly 7 points. If we look here, she's basically up in North Carolina by 2.5, which is around what the polling average on 538 was, by the way. Georgia, the polling average here is somewhat similar to 538's. Florida, Biden was ahead in those polling averages. New Hampshire and Maine are 12 and 13 point victories for Kamala. We see New York about a 27 point lead. Funny enough, the victory margin in the polling aggregate was actually D plus 29, which ended up being wrong. He only won by 23 points. So even this map kind of aligns with a lot of the polling aggregates we got out of some of the states. I think they had Trump up in Texas by 1, and Iowa and Ohio were basically single digits in some of the polling data. So again, this is very fascinating to see that if you apply those 2020 demographics, you get something that is just absolutely abysmal in the Electoral College. And when you look at this and you apply it to the 2020 presidential results, I have done the math, basically calculating the swing from 2020 to 2024's bad polling demographic modeling. And when applying that to the 2024 presidential election to see the shifts in the states, you're going to be shocked to see how good Donald Trump does in the Electoral College. And so looking at those safe Republican states, he's ahead in Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. Also up in Alaska by over 16.5 points. He's up in Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and South Carolina, putting him well over the 120 mark. He's at about 125 safe Electoral College votes. Kamala Harris is ahead in California by 18 points. She is currently ahead in Connecticut by around 15 points as well. Looking at Maryland and Massachusetts, she's ahead by roughly 28 and 26 points respectively, which isn't a great sign for her. If we look at Vermont, a 32-point win, so a similar margin to 2020. Maine's first is still in the safe Democrat column as well. And Rhode Island is also going to be in that safe column alongside New York and DC. New York here is only about a 15-point win, by the way. Just letting you guys know. It's only about a 15-point victory in the state, which is 7 points to the right of the 23-point victory from the 2020 election. Now, if you notice, Hawaii's not in the safe column, and that's because the state actually shifts like 20 points to the right. Like, it actually has the biggest rightward shift out of any of the states. California also has one of the biggest shifts here. And by the way, Trump right now in this demographic model is up by 2 points in the popular vote. And my national average has Trump up by about 2.3 percentage points in the national popular vote. Now, if you notice, Donald Trump, compared from last time, does do a lot better with Hispanics. I mean, he gains a lot with Hispanics. It's not that Harris falls a lot. She kind of loses a point from Biden or two, but Trump kind of closes the gap with Hispanics quite a bit more so than a lot of the other demographics. And so you're going to see that shift there really, really take place. He also really gains with other voters, and Kamala struggling with that demographic. He actually ends up being ahead with that group combined. And so you're going to really see that reflected on this map. A state like Iowa, for example, roughly give or take, is in fact a likely state of about 12 points. And what's very fascinating is right now we have an Ann Seltzer Trump +4 poll out of Iowa. But again, her September polling always tends to be a little bit iffy. Usually they're kind of off. And then her October polling tends to be pretty accurate. The October poll in 2020, or the September poll, was basically tied. So Trump is performing 4 points better. Her final poll was +7, and she underestimated Trump by a point. So what's eerie about this is you apply the 4-point, improvement, he would be theoretically next month be polling ahead by 11. And what's funny is that she underestimated him by a point. And Iowa is currently at a 12-point victory in this demographic model, which is absolutely insane that it basically lines up with that. That's pretty crazy. Looking at Ohio, that's also about a 12-point win, basically voting within each other. The state of Florida is about a 9-point win, which is fascinating because Eric, a guy from the Florida's Voice on X, has basically modeled out the state to about a 9-point win. Texas is also a big victory, basically almost a 14-point win in the state. That is a huge improvement from last cycle. Actually, one of the states that he gains the most in. He tends to gain a lot in states with a lot of big population centers. You'll kind of see that a lot in the polling data, or at least in the crosstabs here when you look at a lot of these states. But states that tend to have a decent amount of population, he's actually gaining in, and it kind of shows that he's improving on his urban performance from 2020, where he's still improved from 2016. He just kind of did slightly worse with his own base of voters that were kind of a little bit more willing to give him a chance in 2016, and we're kind of like, oh, maybe I won't vote for him, I'll go for Biden this time. So Trump still improved in the urban areas by quite a bit in 2020. Most people don't talk about that, and it seems like that's what he's doing right now again. Funny enough, one of the states he actually gains the most in is DC, which is interesting. It's not a state, but he gains quite a bit there. Now, looking at more likely states, he's up in North Carolina by 6.7%. So he's doing something pretty close to what I have in the state. And if he's winning North Carolina by that much, where the mail-in data for Democrats has swung a net 18 points against them, Mark Robinson can in fact win that governor's race if Trump is really winning North Carolina by over 6. It's very possible for Mark to carry himself over the finish line. Georgia coming in at about a 6-point lead for Donald Trump. The New York Times just had it at Trump +4, give or take. They just had it there, and they kind of have a left-leaning sample in the state. The electorate isn't Republican enough in their poll, and Rasmussen Reports has Trump +3, which we are going to be doing a collab with them sometime this week, looking at their state polling and whatnot. But he also admits that there was a pretty left-leaning sample in Georgia and wants to be conservative to not kind of overestimate Donald Trump in these states, and he's still getting Trump +3. And he believes that it is a left-leaning sample and that he expects Donald Trump to do better than that performance. So that all kind of adds up to Georgia being around a 6-point race. That's also what my polling average roughly has the state out right now, believe it or not. My polling average in the state is actually around there. In Arizona, we got a Trump +7.4 percentage point lead. Dude, that is crazy. This is one of the states where he actually improves the most in, by the way, which is insane. This is one of the states where he does the best in, and it's that Maricopa area with Phoenix, with all those Hispanics. When Donald Trump improves with Hispanics like that, it's going to reflect. Same thing in Nevada. Trump gains 8 points in Nevada. He's up by 5.5, and that mostly probably would come from Clark County, where you also have a large Hispanic and working class population. And he's gotten a lot of endorsements like the Culinary Union and Teamsters. That's really going to help him out. And in the swing states, Donald Trump has gone from trailing Joe Biden in all the swing states to leading Kamala Harris with the Teamsters Union, according to their own polling of their own voters, of their own, union workers. So again, everything is adding up to Trump doing very well in the Sun Belt. Maine second is about a 10-ish point victory for him. In the crosstabs here, he does about 3 points better in Maine. Maine's second congressional district, which that basically puts an end to all of his likely states. And you can see, guys, he's right at the floor of 268, just like what I told you guys in the beginning of the video. That's what I told you his floor was. And you could even add Wisconsin and Pennsylvania there, and we'll get to why you can in a second. Washington is going to roughly be around a 13-point victory. Oregon is around an 11-point win. Colorado is coming in at just about 9 points for Kamala Harris. Illinois coming in at about 10 points, so Trump is doing 6 points better in Illinois. Probably comes from Cook County. His gains with African Americans definitely is going to boost him up there. New Jersey, another state where he gains quite substantially. He actually gains 7 points in the state here. Again, another big boost. And in Delaware, he's getting a pretty big shift here, about 5 points to the right. Every single state shifts to the right, by the way, guys. Just to let you guys know, every single state in the nation is shifting to the right, according to this. And not only that, Hawaii shifts to the right. Now, the state's been trending to the right already for a pretty long time by like 5 to 10 points each cycle. But the fact that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are way less popular than traditional Democrats, I'm not surprised to see this shift. Hawaii comes in as just a 9.5-point win for Kamala Harris. And what's pretty interesting is we had polling, the only actual poll with about 250 registered voters, where Biden was leading by 8 points with third parties against Donald Trump. So again, we even have polling data to back up that margin. And when we look at a state like, for example, Maine actually, believe it or not, still comes in as a 6-point win. Now, I am very questionable about this. It's possible that it does stay in this category, but I am a little suspicious of Maine at large still being a likely state. I think if Trump was winning the popular vote by 2, it would be way more competitive, but I could be wrong. We'll see as time goes on. Now, that basically puts an end to all of the likely states for both candidates. and essentially leaves a lot of electoral votes up for grabs for all of these candidates to get. And Donald Trump is up in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania by 3.5 points in both. And Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, on his show today, literally just said that Wisconsin is more than likely favored for Donald Trump, and Pennsylvania, the internals have Trump up 3. Kamala's internals have Trump up 4, which is literally the median result of that. 3.5 is the median result of those two numbers. So that seems to be a pretty good indication of where it's at. And looking at Michigan, he's up by about almost 1.7%. I mean, he got that endorsement from the only, mayor with the only Muslim majority town or city in the country in Michigan. And Trump got the endorsement. He's a Democrat, so that may play a big factor there. He's also gaining about 5 points in Michigan, so clearly there's a big shift there. Now, looking at Nebraska second, he is actually losing that by 2.5. I guess here the leftward trend is just a little bit too much for it to flip. New Hampshire is about a 4-point race for Kamala Harris, as well as Virginia being about a 4-point race. And what's very fascinating about this is we have a guy that basically modeled out, his name is Christian, he modeled out 2021, 2020 privately, and a bunch of state races in 2022. In 2020, he was off by about 0.5 point in the state of Virginia. In 2021, he predicted Youngkin's victory and was off by 0.05%, guys. And right now, he says he's going to model out Virginia for the cycle, and he's expecting, give or take, a 6 to 8 point victory for Kamala, but that's with the early data. That doesn't account for what he thinks election day is going to be, which he said would definitely decrease the margin. And he said it's definitely not going to be the 10-point victory that it was before. So it's possible that my margin here, at least, is within, plausible reasoning. Minnesota is around a 2.8 percentage point win, almost a 3-point victory for Kamala Harris. This is one of the states I think is actually going to trend to the left compared to the rest of the nation, because I actually think she may hold her ground in Hennepin County. This is like one of the only places in the country where I actually think she's going to probably either hold her ground or actually improve from Biden. She may actually do better in Hennepin County than Joe Biden. It's very possible. I think she may do slightly worse, but it's definitely possible that she actually does better there, but she's going to suffer massively in the rural areas. And for the final state on the map, New Mexico, this is going to surprise people. It is exactly a 1-point race. Just a single point for Kamala Harris. It's almost a tilt state. Almost a tilt state. Now, everyone's going to be like, what's going on here? Why is this so close? Well, the reason why this could be very close is because of the fact that he's gaining here by about 10 points, guys. And what it is the Hispanic vote. And New Mexico has the highest population of Hispanics in the entire country besides Texas. And they turn out big in elections. And if Donald Trump is improving with Hispanics by roughly 14 points nationwide, it's gonna show in New Mexico. And if he's winning Texas by 14 and winning Arizona by 7, it would be ridiculous to say that that wouldn't carry over to New Mexico. If Kamala Harris later on, when we show this map again, if she's performing even slightly worse with non-college voters by the time we get to the election in these same set of polls, she could very well lose New Mexico. It's very possible. She is within striking distance of losing the state. I'd also say that she's probably within striking distance of probably even losing Virginia and Minnesota and whatnot. I'm also going to probably do this with other polls included as well to kind of get a feel of where we're really at, because I may also include, Alice Intel, Rasmussen, Big Poll Data, other accurate pollsters, and combine it with these to kind of get a more comprehensive shift model. It'll be pretty interesting to see how that pans out and applying that to the 2020 results and kind of seeing what the accurate polls plus the bad polls, kind of show for 2024. But I wanted to make this video to show you guys, even the bad pollsters, when you really do the work to basically model out the demographics with the new swingometer and you compare the results and the shifts and you look at the 2020 results and you apply that shift, it shows Donald Trump winning fairly easily. And this is also very similar to Gold Crown Politics' prediction in the Electoral College, by the way. It's fairly similar. And it's somewhat similar to mine. Mine's a little bit more right-leaning, but overall it's the same Electoral College count. So either way, even the bad polls are basically proving that my margins would be correct. And even if I get Trump +5 and it ends up being Trump +3.5 in Wisconsin, it'll be like, okay, dude, like I was still the most accurate either way, because no one's going to have Trump +3.5 or Trump +4 in Wisconsin. And this is a lot of these margins are pretty much around where Robert Barnes, who's been really good with this kind of stuff, who's a friend of the People's Pundit, Richard Barris, he's been pretty good about these predictions too. And these basically line up with all his predictions in the Electoral College. And so if you guys did enjoy this extensive breakdown and analysis, make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.